What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. I am joined today by two lovely friends of mine, Mr. Tom Orange, Mr. Nikhil from Esteem. How are you guys doing tonight?
Wonderful. Uh,
Right.
really looking forward to talking about this because there's definitely some stuff in here that I'm looking forward to seeing what you guys think about.
Yeah, yeah, man.
Same. Yeah. It's so nice to be here. Get to talk with you again, Jake, and great to meet you finally, Tom,
Yeah,
after enjoying your channel for a while now. So it's always great where real life and the booktube space, the virtual booktube space collide.
oh,
Yes,
absolutely.
definitely, definitely. Yeah, I've been looking forward to this. This will be really fun. We are gathered here today to discuss While Darkness Gathers, the latest book from Dr. Philip Chase himself. And I think we all really, really loved the Edan Trilogy. And we're all really excited to get to this as soon as possible after it got published. And um, I think it's safe to say that we all enjoyed it, but we're going to talk about it in a little bit more detail here, of course. But maybe a reasonable place to start might be, why don't we think about like, I think expectations are so interesting. I've been thinking about this a lot with books lately. That like, what were we kind of feeling coming into it? And so maybe Tom, I'll start with you just because you're kind of closest to me on the screen, how it laid us out here.
Okay.
What were you thinking coming into this? Maybe we keep it for spoiler free here for a second, and then we can jump into spoilers in a few minutes. But what were you thinking coming into this based off of how you felt about the first trilogy there?
Yeah, so I had mixed feelings because I really liked the way the original trilogy ends. And
Yeah.
I was split because part of me was very excited to come back to this world. And I have talked about how I know there's legacy characters in here. Obviously, won't say which characters, but there are characters who are coming along from the original trilogy. And I was curious on how that was going to blend together because I was so happy with how that trilogy ended that I was like, it's like I'm excited to get back and be with them and be in this world again because I do really enjoy it. But also, you always have the chance of like destroying a legacy
Mm.
of like what has already been built. But I will say, I mean, I had a lot of faith that that wouldn't happen. But that is kind of where I was like so on the fence of like, not that I was pretty sure I would like it because I like the original trilogy so much, but I did think to myself more than once of like, with it being a smaller time gap between them and there being those legacy characters, like, is it going to affect how I feel about the original trilogy in any way? So
Mm.
that's kind of where I came into it a little bit as far as expectations go.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Nikhil, your turn. What did you think coming into this?
Yeah, honestly, echoing a lot of Tom's sentiments, I think like for me, I always have excitement and trepidation about film and TV that does this, books that do this, where it's like it ends in a really satisfying way, and then now we're kind of opening up that box again to explore a little bit
Mm.
more of the world. And it's like, you're both excited about that prospect because it's like you want to live in that world longer, so that gives you the opportunity to do that. But then also it's like with legacy characters, it's always very tricky because you've already kind of explored them. So at what point, I always feel like, and I don't feel that about, While Darkness Gathers, but I think in general, I feel like what more are they adding to the story besides fan service? And
Mm.
you really want them to be a part of like the new story. And also you want to care about the new characters and not constantly be looking at like, oh, but they're not so and so,
Yeah.
which I have felt reading other fantasy series that do that. So it was, trepidation, but also excitement because I think, I already saw that it was much smaller page count. And I knew it was like, oh, that's going to make this already feel different, I think, compared to a
Yeah.
Dan trilogy. So automatically by the construction, it will offer something new. And safe to say, like, I knew I was in good hands because I just love Philip's writing and I always feel like his characters just leap off the page. So I was, yeah,
Hmm.
I was both, trepidation and excitement. And
Yeah,
luckily
Yep.
it fed into the excitement more than trepidation. So.
for sure. For sure. I agree with you guys a lot. I think and I'm glad that you brought that up about that it's a shorter book because that I think that helped um what's the word I'm looking for? Guide some of my expectations a little bit because a lot of what I love so much about the trilogy is how deep he was able to get into some of those themes that like you're helped a lot by the longer page count, right? You can really get in there. What is this, like 300 pages long or something? Like
Yeah.
it's pretty
Yeah.
short. And so I kind of came into it being like, okay, this is probably going to be a lot more streamlined. And I'm sure there's still themes and stuff in here because we know how much Philip loves that kind of stuff and what he reads and all that. But I wasn't expecting the same breadth that we got in the trilogy. So and I do think that's probably helpful to come in. Like if you're expecting it to have to cover the same amount of scope as those other books did, you might feel a little bit disappointed. Not that there's nothing there. It's just going to be more narrow because it has to be, right? And I think it's in a way is even more impressive for being that, right? Like writing concisely is very difficult in any. I haven't written a fantasy book, right? But writing stuff for my grad program and whatnot, like it's really hard to be concise and still get something noteworthy out of it. So it's awesome that he was able to do this.
Yeah.
And I think maybe that's another interesting thing we can touch on without getting too spoilery here yet is like, what are some things that stuck out to you guys from this? Whether it was a theme or character or just some feeling that you got, or like the reading experience in general. Like, what would you say were some standout aspects of this if you were to kind of, I don't know if recommending it to somebody is a good word because if they read the full trilogy, they're probably going to read this, right? It's not much of a commitment. But what might we say to that? Maybe Nikhil, maybe we'll start with you this time. Bounce around.
Yeah, I think, one thing I loved about the original trilogy is, there's a lot of characters, there's a lot of world building. So that's never sacrificed, but you never feel like you're thrust into the middle of something where you're like, I have to just figure this out, and there's no real guardrails. You kind of start to get at least for me, like I started getting the names very fast, which is
Yeah.
I think it's very rare for a fantasy series of like this scope to do that. I felt the same with this newest entry is like the new characters, they were immediately easy to identify.
Hmm.
And I didn't find myself going like, oh, yeah, but they're not the legacy characters that didn't quite make it to this entry. Like it felt like, oh, I'm on board. I felt fully on board with these new characters, which was really cool.
Yeah.
Um, and I think, as one door closes with a trilogy and another one opens with something like this, I was curious, like what more could be explored here, and I thought it was a really cool way of like I'm trying to be as vague as possible because I don't want to spoil anything, but like what the door that opened up to this story was something that worked really well for the size. It was like really well
Yes.
paced. You kind of had a very focused goal. You didn't have a bunch of people in completely different going in different directions, which you couldn't. It had to be a little bit more of a singular goal. So I think the things that it set out to do like that, it really achieved. So at least for me, that was something that was kind of immediate reaction. I
Yeah.
don't know. How about you guys? Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree. Tom, do you have anything to add there? Or if not, I can jump in.
Yeah. So one thing I think that I was both surprised but not at the same time was just like the emotional impact that I felt throughout this book because it is short, right? So a lot of times with some of those like larger emotions that you can feel about something, I feel like you need that page count to like live and breathe in it for a long time.
Mm,
And maybe some of that is helped out from the original trilogy, but even with completely new things here, I feel like that was all established really quickly and I was really impressed by that because it does feel like a lot of times you need 500, 600 pages to like get some of those emotions and I just really felt multiple times that like we were able to establish that stuff so much faster in here and he had to, right, because he kept it short and I
right.
was very impressed by that.
Yeah. Yeah,
Mhm.
definitely. Um, I think I was also really impressed, just building off of what you guys were saying, that he was able to, without spoiling anything, like compassion and empathy are a huge theme of the trilogy. And those things are still here. But he didn't just like keep beating a dead horse. He was like, let me try some different stuff. And um, like parenthood is a huge thing in here. And like how he how he was able to take new themes really and get them in this tiny little book without all that page count was so impressive. And like I found myself still caring about the characters a lot. I wouldn't say I connected to it quite as much as like Dayraven, for example. And when we like from chapter one of the first book, I was like, this is my guy. And I was just really, really connected with him. And we have a different main character in this book. And I found myself I did feel a connection. It wasn't quite as strong, but that's okay. Right. But I was just so, I don't know, all the other aspects of it, I think, were still so great. Like this, I wound up having such a great time with this book, and I loved that there was some things we brought back and some brand new stuff, and just I don't know. I was so I thought it was so cool that he was able to take new things and still have a really big impact and a really good punch by the end of this short,
Mm.
really
Yep.
short story.
It's a
So
really great bridge, like between like
yeah,
the original trilogy into this, still being its own thing, paying respects to the things that happened in the original trilogy. I do think, I mean, I think that's kind of what you're hitting on is like
yeah,
that bridging the gap between those two is done so well.
Mm.
yeah. Well said.
Yeah, I also feel like, I also felt very similarly about Day Raven, like instantly struck me
Hmm.
as a character who didn't necessarily know what the future held, even in the first book when he's like a bit more unsure of himself and, um, he still had elements like the seeds of what would make him who he
Hmm.
is as the books progresses, whereas for Rial, I guess, in While Darkness Gathers, there's a lot more of a quest for identity. Where do I fit in? And there's like a little bit less of a surety there, self-assuredness, maybe. um and maybe that
Yeah,
had some sort of a factor,
yeah,
but just something that kind of jumped
absolutely.
out. Yeah.
That actually reminded me of something that stuck out to me also that is pretty spoilery. So I'm hesitant to either say it now or I'm say like let's just go ahead and throw the warning up and get into some stuff. Um, I kind of lean that way because like we're here to talk spoilers, so we might as well have fun with it, right?
Yeah,
Um,
let's do
Let's
it.
do it.
but I guess the last thing, spoiler free, if you want to leave, that now's the time to leave. But like if you like the trilogy, you have to do this basically, right? It's such a small commitment and it's
Yeah.
great. And if you haven't read the trilogy yet, please know very satisfying ending to the trilogy. This is still awesome, right? This doesn't taint the legacy of that in any way or anything like it's very, very good.
Yep.
Just further reading in this world. So, okay,
If I may add one more thing to that non-spoiler portion of the
yeah,
thing, I was also thinking about how, like what you said, Jake, about not beating the dead horse in terms of themes, and uh, it's very evident. Like Philip Chase is a fan of thematic writing and like
hmm,
what he reads of Malazan Book of the Fallen and all this stuff, and so it was great that in this entry it's felt to me there is a compassion element, of course, but there's also duty, sacrifice,
yeah,
and kind of exploring those through multiple character POVs actually.
yeah,
And I guess we could dive into how in spoilers, but it's nice
yeah,
that he not only kind of reinforces existing themes, but he also introduces new ones, and he's able to do all that in this small page count. It's just
yeah,
amazing. Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. Okay, now's the time. If you haven't read it, leave, please. Thank you for being here, but please leave. Okay, so one of the things that what you said, Nikhil, kind of jarred loose in my head was which, by the way, we should say this too. Obviously, spoilers for the trilogy as well, because this is a sequel, right? So,
Yeah.
um, so with Dayraven, we had, you're right. He always had that sense of he kind of knew where he was. He had good intentions. He kind of knew where he was headed. He did have some doubt here and there. He's like, man, am I the right guy for this? But like he was learning to be capable and he was always moving forward. With Rial, it's like she is immediately so capable. And it's like it's almost a polar opposite struggle of like how do I hold back and still help the people that I love and do these important things, but like almost being scared of how capable she is. And I thought that was really it was sort of a different side of the same coin, and I just loved that. I thought that was really cool. So
That's a great point. That's a really great point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I didn't it's funny. I didn't think about that until you just said it, but it is like it rings so true because they obviously both end up with like the same kind of power, but they came up through it so differently. And
yeah.
that is a very because like I'm not somebody who loved Day Raven actually in the original trilogy. I think the
Okay.
way I talked about him was like as a character, I like had immense respect for him and
Mhm.
everything, but like I don't know, I never really connected to him. But
Sure.
like I don't know, that's a great distinction between the two that I
Yeah,
didn't really
yeah,
think about. Yeah.
That's interesting. And the also, by the way, did any of us not immediately guess that she was Day Raven's daughter?
I did.
Oh,
I
yeah.
knew right away.
Yeah,
There were
yeah.
a couple instances where I was like, maybe he's gonna try to like I think at one point very early on he mentions like another student, and I was like, maybe that's her, and this is gonna be like some kind of twist. But then it becomes very apparent.
Yeah. I was like, it
Hmm.
has to
But
be. It's
yeah,
insanely powerful for some reason. Like, I'm
Right,
just like,
right,
right,
it's
right.
yeah.
got to be. But that's fine, right? That doesn't take away from the story at all.
No, I don't
Um,
know.
but it's yeah. I was kind of like, yeah,
Yeah,
I knew this one.
Yeah,
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 Um,
yeah. Same. And I think that's the point, like to your point as well, is it was the other side of the coin. It's like you kind of the things that you normally would discover in a series, like, oh, this is the, person that the chosen one or whatever it is, that trope. And all those things are like kind of already alluded to from the very beginning. So
yeah.
then it's like, what is that story actually about? And
Yes.
now that I'm thinking about it, it also kind of harkens back to the original trilogy, because like book two's ending could have been a book three ending. And so it's like, where do we go from here? So it's kind of the same
Yes.
idea. It's like,
Ooh.
Day Raven, I guess spoiler for the series, but like Day Raven saves the day. Now what?
Yeah.
And it's like Rial is all powerful, and we kind of know that she is Day Raven's like child, and now what? Um, and
Yeah.
that's kind of cool, because it's like then you have to explore something completely different. Like in book three of the Edan trilogy, Day Raven's journey goes from outward to inward.
Mhm.
You know, and like Rial's journey goes from inward to outward in a way.
I like that a lot. Very
Yeah.
nice. Yeah. Yeah, and I love that you said that too. And I didn't mean that in a bad way that we knew it was David's daughter because
No,
like
no, no.
it's
yeah,
revealed pretty early. It's not like that the
yeah.
whole book is supposed to be building to this huge mystery
No,
and it was
yeah,
like
no.
it's not that
Yeah.
at all. But yeah, I love how you pointed that out. That's a great point. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
One thing I did think was interesting because maybe I'm slightly misremembering, but I was actually kind of surprised that at the start of the book she didn't know who her mom was,
Me
because at
too.
the end of I really expected, because there's that moment at the end where they're like, well, maybe the way your kingdom is ruled needs to change, and I was really surprised to see that that's not something that happened. It's one of those things that I was
Mm,
actually very sure of before I read anything. I was like, so maybe she's not going to know who her dad is. Maybe they want to keep that ambiguous, but she's definitely going to know who her mom is, right? And the fact that that was something in there, I was really surprised by that. And I think
yeah.
it was kind of a cool
Mm.
piece of like she still kept to these traditions that probably mattered to her a lot. It's how like she was raised. She saw like that this is how the kingdom was before, and she like her people probably needed that. They probably didn't want change, and so
Mm.
I thought that was kind
Yeah.
of interesting.
It was. And
Was.
Sakura's relationship with Rial was so interesting too with like the that question like is it okay to lie to protect somebody? It's is I think really interesting the way that he sort of played with that here. That it did actually lead to some bad things, but then like it also protected her. So like, there's not a clear, and I love this when authors do this. That they're not saying this is what I think about this thing. They're just saying here's this question and here's some stuff that happened and you can form your own opinion.
Yeah,
And yeah, so I like that aspect a lot. And we got to say, Philip, why you got to keep killing people? Sakura's awesome, and like
yeah,
that hurt me.
yeah.
That hurt me.
Me too.
Bring her back. Bring
There we go. While
her.
Darkness Gathers Part Two: The
Yeah,
Resurrection of Sakura.
yeah, yeah,
Riel could probably do it. She's strong enough, right?
Yeah, I believe. I have faith.
Yeah, her and Saren can like work together and they can make it work. It was cool to see Saren again. Did you guys have any thoughts on seeing her again?
yeah. So obviously that's like the crux that like gets the story going, right? That's like
Hmm.
the first. Um, I don't know if you guys saw it, but that's when I made a video that said I have beef with Philip Chase, and it's because I was like, he can. She was either my favorite or second favorite character in the original trilogy, and
Yeah, he's
so
great.
yeah, and which is crazy because she comes in, so late into it and everything. And so I said that because I was like, I cannot believe he's about to kill her. And like I just like could not accept that that was going to happen. Obviously, it's not, but like I was like, there's no way he's going to do this to me, to have this like light of a character and just like snuff that out. I was like devastated as I
Yeah.
was reading that. Yeah.
But it's another just the fact that she's in that position, she's so sick and so weak, and it's like it's another at first I was like, what's the point of this? Like why are we because like then Rial gets there and she heals her and it's fine. So I'm like, why was this so important? But then in hindsight at the end, the whole point of this book is how do we react when stuff is really bad? How do we like carry ourselves while darkness gathers? What do we do? Right. And so when I thought about it in that sense, then I was like, oh, this is so great that like Saren is a good person and something really bad happened to her. How do they react?
Yeah.
So when I thought about it that way, I was like, okay, this is actually awesome and didn't bother me that it all worked out okay
Mhm.
because it suits the themes perfectly, right?
Yeah.
100%. Yeah. Yeah, she was one of my favorite characters as well, and
Mhm.
most enduring like characters in the series, and coming in so late. And I too was like, oh man, I really hope that this ends better than I think it's going to, for her. But I think also part of that is the timelines. It was only 16 years after, so one would think like, okay, yeah, more legacy characters will be in this for the long haul than you think there
Yeah.
might be, and there's not so much time that has passed, and so that was, especially like, oh, come on,
Yeah.
but yeah, you're right. Both of you are right on that. Like, and Jake, what you mentioned about that theme of like, what do we do when you know when it hits the fan? So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. And Bush, by the way, I don't know if you guys are Family Guy fans,
yeah.
but if you know the moment where you're just like, oh, he said it when they're in the movie theater, like the name of the movie,
Oh yeah,
Oh,
when we get this
yes.
line in the book,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. It was great.
yeah,
It's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
it was awesome. And the sort of the small party that Rial is traveling with, I thought was
Mm.
really was you guys were mentioning how great the characters were and how much they felt so like fully formed immediately, even with such a short page count. Just to reiterate that, like the people that she's with, I'm trying to remember, is Kel and what was the other one's name?
Oh,
Um, it's been a minute since I read this.
Me
yeah.
Anyway,
too.
their
Yeah.
their personalities are so strong. Like you know exactly who they are right away. But it's not that because they're super shallow. It's like they actually are pretty complicated, but it's just
Yes.
written
Mhm.
in a way that like they're so consistent, and so you can really identify who they are really quick. And like the cutest dog also.
The cutest.
Bellu.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Adorable. It was such
Yeah.
a great addition to the story, was just
Yeah.
having like this adorable little dog running around.
Yeah. And Kel he was just like, we can't have dogs here. I hate dogs. And he's like playing with it on the
Yeah,
side.
Yeah,
he's
Like,
yeah.
like while everyone's asleep, like feeding it and
yeah.
everything. Yeah, it's just like classic of I don't like dogs
Right.
behavior.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Um,
I'm such a sucker for animal companions too,
yeah.
and it's like, and sometimes they're done better in certain stories than others, and I really felt
Sure.
like this one added something
Yeah,
really nice to the gang,
I
definitely.
agree.
And I appreciated that it wasn't a it's not like a battle companion, right? Like those animals are cool too. Like I love Drizzt and Guinevere and like Storm is awesome and like all this, there's a
Mhm.
lot of really cool ones. But this was just like it's just a little ray of happiness and sunshine in
Yeah,
this dark
exactly.
world.
Yeah,
Perfect.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of
It was
reminds me
really
of.
great.
Did you all ever read the Dark Tower series?
Not
Not
yet.
yet.
Okay.
Not yet.
Well, when you get there, I'll just say,
Okay.
the animal companion in this reminded me kind of an animal companion in that,
Oh, fun.
for the
Okay.
same kind of idea of like a light in the darkness kind of. Yeah.
Yeah. How did you guys feel about so we mentioned Sakura a bit, right? And some of the stuff that she did with should I lie to my daughter? Should I even tell her she's my daughter? How do I protect her? What do we do? But we saw Orvandil again. We saw Philip told me it's Gnorn, by the way. I always said
Oh,
Norn, but he said that
that's
The Norn.
you
Okay.
do hit the G a little bit. So
Okay.
um and we got to see them again. How'd you guys obviously you get that cool nostalgia factor, but beyond that, do you guys feel that this added to their story and like it was meaningful that they were there, or There's something else to grab onto other than just like, oh, cool, we get to see, you know, Han Solo's back, right? Or was there something cool? Did you guys have any thoughts there?
Yeah, so I think with it's Gnorn is how that's what you said, Gnorn.
Apparently, yeah.
Yeah, okay. He it almost felt like he had kind of, and he was already kind of in this role, but he almost ascended to the wise wizard everyone just kind of comes
Yeah.
to at this point, which is fine. I think it fits in. So like I don't know if it really expanded his story too much, but Orvindil I thought was very interesting. And he's a character who I think about a lot from the original trilogy. Just because he always talks about that like bloodlust, that battle lust that he always had. And I always
Hmm.
found that really interesting. And I was kind of curious to see like how did he handle that and how he would rule,
Yeah.
over everything after everything that happens. And
Yeah.
I think it was an interesting way to explore conflict in this world still, especially this close to what happens at the end of the first book, right? Or the trilogy. I think it's an interesting way to there still be conflict and war after something that already had this like gargantuan battle. And like I don't want to say everything wrapped up cleanly with like a bow, but the world should almost feel like it's kind of at peace after some of the stuff that happens in the trilogy. And so
Hmm.
to still have conflict going on and some of the stuff, I wanted to see that and how some of those things would be explored. And so I think it was great for him.
Yeah. I liked it a
Mm.
lot. Anything to add, or do you just agree?
Yeah, no, I agree with all of the above. I think
Okay.
like for Sakura, I thought also in addition to of course Gnorn and Orvindil, Sakura, I really enjoyed her character arc actually in this, and I felt like it was not necessarily about her; it was her relationship with Rial, and kind of like um yeah, explore. I think it was a good vehicle for Philip to explore that theme of duty, duty, familial duty, doing the right thing or the wrong thing for the right reasons,
Hmm.
and then kind of how to make things right again, and the
Yeah.
sacrifice that comes with that.
Yes.
And sometimes it's you can't protect the people that you love forever just by keeping them from situations. You
Yeah.
have to kind of allow things to happen. Um, and so I thought that was really cool. And I think like Sakura was also one of my favorites from the original trilogy, so I was happy to see her back. I didn't always agree with her decisions, but I enjoyed seeing her make those decisions and
Yeah.
kind of like her arc from the beginning to the very end.
Totally.
I thought that was really cool how that was done.
Yeah, I completely agree. Well, you guys touched on two of them. I guess the other one that we mentioned was Gunnorn, right? And I guess I'll stick up for him a little bit because he was one of my favorites as well from the first. Him and Orvindale had such a fun like Gimli Legolas thing
Yep.
that
Yeah.
from the in the trilogy, and so I really liked him. And here, I thought it was fun to see like Tom, what you were saying, like he really continues on that trajectory that he was going to now. Like it feels really like melancholic to me that he's just like, oh, like we got to keep doing this. Like we got to keep seeing people die, and and I just really appreciated that because in the trilogy he was much more prone to like, yeah, like let's go fight. We got to do this. And it seemed like now he's just kind of beaten down and just like, dude, this is not good, and it sucks that this is like, so it's. I think he accepts that it's sort of a necessary evil in some instances, right? But he's just like bummed out about it, and I like seeing that represented on the page also, right? Whereas like not everybody is quite like Orvindale is still out there with the sword and doing the thing, and he doesn't
Hmm.
probably doesn't like it, but still, it's just different, right? So the variety is appreciated anyway.
Mm.
But we do have. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I just gonna say one other thing occurred to me was,
Yeah.
this story was interesting because after the events of book three of the original trilogy, it really kind of ties things up in a nice bow. And
Hmm.
so it's like, what do the survivors do afterwards? There is a little bit of like, where do I fit in now into the story?
Yeah.
You know, the big things in my life have already happened. Like, where do you
Yeah.
go from here? But then somehow the fate of the world, you still feel that stakes in this book, which I thought was
Yeah.
brilliant because I felt like how can you explore both? It seems almost like oil and water, like it wouldn't
Mm.
mix, but somehow both are explored actually.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And I'm glad that you said that about the stakes because that kind of leads perfectly into what I was going to say, is that we have a couple more returning characters, and that's the huge dragon and the elf.
Yeah.
And like they're carrying the stakes, right? Like it's part of the premise when you come into the book is that this that Gorserhad that
Mhm.
is like just rampaging and just destroying all kinds of stuff, and we got to deal with this. And then Rial goes out to try to heal Saren, but she's also like, man, can I control this dragon and make it stop? And we, this was another instance of me, just like with Saren. We're going on this journey, and Rial meets up with the dragon and has this conversation and is like, basically convinces the dragon to cooperate, and like things kind of work out. And on the surface level, I was just like, is that easy, really? Like again? But then I sit back at the end and I think about it in hindsight, and if it didn't work out, I don't think that would have reinforced the theme of what do we do while darkness gathers? Well, we try to make some light, right? And we try to, do things the right way. And things were so bad, and Rial was like, "Let me just talk to this thing, right? Let's try to do this the peaceful way. Let's try to like navigate this well." And if that hadn't worked out, that kind of hamstrings the the thing that we're looking at a little bit, you know. Um, but it was just cool to see the dragon because I like the dragon a lot. That was one of my
Yeah.
favorite aspects of book two, especially. Um, did you guys have any other thoughts on the dragon, or if not, what did you think about the elf coming back? Because I think that's really interesting.
Um, so I did like that conversation that the dragon had, and I thought it was an interesting perspective of just like having this creature that's been around for so long, just kind of like it was very ready to like accept not being around anymore, which I
Yeah.
found interesting because I mean it just like having a lifespan that long and like doing all the things that this dragon has obviously done, and I don't know, I did find that aspect just to be interesting, and I will say I was actually kind of surprised that the elf was back in this
Mm.
story. I didn't really expect it, so it was one of those things that like when I realized that it was going to be here again, I was like, oh, this is not something I thought was going to happen, but
Mhm.
I enjoyed it. So yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I too was surprised about the elf actually. Because I thought that the story would be mainly about Gorserhad and that
Hmm.
singular aspect of like the antagonist, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
Um, and I too felt like, I kind of wish, and this is something that just probably couldn't be done in such a short page count. But and maybe I just love longer books when it comes to fantasy. I don't know, probably. But I kind of wish the whole actual confrontation with Gorsarhat, like that whole sequence in the last, say, third of the book was a bit more drawn out, or like there was a little
Mm.
bit more to it, just because as like stakes go, I think you kind of knew what you didn't necessarily know how it was all going to come to pass, but you kind of knew the direction the story was headed in by that point.
Sure.
And so I think I would have loved just a little bit more of that. um but yeah, I mean, I think for this being a 300-page novel, it's kind of insane how much has been packed into it, and
Yeah.
yet it never feels like really rushed or abrupt or anything like that.
Not
It's
at
just
all. Not at all. And I also was surprised. So when we start to think about this elf thing, right? And first of all, how cool was that it's like taking people's bodies and slowly, like Michael Myers
Yes.
just walking over
It's
to where Riel is.
very creepy, nice little horror.
yeah,
I keep telling
Yes.
Philip he should just write a horror novel for us, but
Yeah.
yeah,
that would
Yeah,
be
that was really cool.
yeah.
But then I'm sitting here this whole time and I'm like, is this actually Dayraven? That he's like coming to be with the daughter and like help her. And then the elf gets there and it takes the form of Dayraven. I was like, I knew it. I knew it. But then I think it was trying to trick her, right? And it wasn't
Yeah.
actually
yeah.
Dayraven. Which is good at the end of the day because I'm usually not a fan of like resurrection stuff when it's like a noble sacrifice because it cheapens it a little bit.
Hmm.
And so I'm glad that it wasn't. But he got me. I don't know if he did that on purpose to try to
Yeah.
lead me to think that, but he got me.
I definitely did think I was like, could it just be Dayraven trying to? Because especially I was like, okay, so she doesn't know who her mom is. She now knows who her dad is. Like, is he trying to make that happen? I did have that thought at one point that maybe
Same.
he's going to bring them all together in the end, and it's not going to be like this like trouble thing that happens. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, man. It was I'm really happy with how it ended. I'm really happy with how it ended. Because there's
yeah.
some like not everything was super great and happy and perfect the way that, still bad things happen. There's a big battle, right?
Yeah.
But I think it still ended on a really like uplifting and hopeful and optimistic note, which was nice. Right? I tend to prefer that on,
I do too.
I like
Yeah.
dark stories, but let me have, it doesn't have to be a perfectly happy ending, but at least a little bit of something is nice.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I feel like we've hit most, if not all, the main things here. I have another question that I want to ask you guys, but before that, is there any other aspects of this that we haven't talked about that you guys want to get out
So
there?
there is one thing that I want to talk about, and this is
Okay.
something. So there is, I called it that relationship that happens
Okay.
with the Raven Eyes and the captured. Is it his actual daughter or stepdaughter? Orvandale's stepdaughter who gets brought to their
Oh,
camp. I think it's his
that's
stepdaughter.
right. How did I
Yeah,
totally blanked on this whole part of the story. What's wrong
right.
with me? Yes,
No, yeah.
continue.
So I think that my question is, how do you guys feel about that relationship? Because I'm in two minds of it. One is it very much almost feels like Stockholm syndrome
Hmm.
because she kind of like literally, I mean, she sees like her maid servants like get tortured and
Yeah.
murdered and all of this stuff, and then she like comes around to it in the end. And I think part of it is okay, so you could look at it that way, or you could look at it at the duty way, where she's like, I can prevent so much like atrocities from happening if I take the sacrifice, and
Hmm.
maybe it's not as bad as I thought it was going to be originally. Like it seems like she comes to that decision herself, but I don't know. I'm of two minds of it when it comes to that relationship.
Yeah. Nikhil, do you want to go first? Or do you want me to?
Yeah, I mean, I guess to say, very much agree. I think like when I first started seeing where it was going, I felt is this, it felt a little bit, it kind of like rubbed me the wrong way in a way. And it was like, oh, I thought it might be, more kind of like Stockholm syndrome, like a feel of that. But at the end, with her kind of taking her agency into her own hands and going, "This is what I want. This is what is for the greater good." It kind of because I think if I remember correctly, because I forget the sequence of events, but that happens kind of towards the end, right? Right at the
Yes.
yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah.
And I felt like there's that whole last third feels like duty and sacrifice themes explored through various characters,
Yes.
Sakura and Rial,
Yes.
their relationship, them as individuals. Then yeah, I just felt like you see this in multiple characters, and so it made sense that like, oh, maybe this was a for the greater good kind of a decision that was something she felt agency to make, I guess.
Yeah. That's so funny. I actually didn't even think about the Stockholm syndrome aspect of it, but I
Okay.
totally see where you're coming from now that you say that, I'm like, oh yeah, I totally can see how it would feel that way. But yeah, I definitely took it in the like almost like making yourself into a martyr to an
Hmm.
extent.
Yeah.
Um, I'm so glad you brought this up. I can't believe I blanked on this because this was so important to the story
Yes.
also,
It is
right?
super
Because
important. Yeah.
there's like it's this whole other group of people that we're following, and then there's I don't remember the guy's name, the son that like tried to assault her
Oh, yes.
Oh,
and got kicked out.
Then he changes his name, which is why I can't remember it.
right.
Yeah.
Because he runs off to Orvandale and is like, "This is what's happening. She's being treated awful." And
Yeah.
it's yeah,
Because
yeah.
he's trying to like make them go fight each other,
Yes,
right?
he is the antagonist, but like
Yeah.
obviously there's already fuel on that fire, but he's the one who's
Yeah.
like lighting the match and throwing it at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh man, what is his name? I'm gonna have to look it up at some point.
Yeah.
Um, I
Hard
don't want to
enough to
like.
remember one name, let alone two.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I'm so glad you brought that up, though. Yeah, that's super important. So make sure you don't gloss over that, like apparently I did.
Yeah.
Nikhil, do you have any other big things that we missed?
I was trying to think. Honestly, I feel like, at least on my end, I feel like we covered the things that that really jumped out at me.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I don't know. How about you, Jake?
I think so. I have. one thing to share that I'd like to get your guys' thoughts on, and then I have a question for you both. So I guess I'll start with the thing. In terms of like the tone of the book, I thought was really interesting because to me it felt like it's really dark, right? But at the same time, it feels like um it feels really light also. Not necessarily happy, but like it's not like this really heavy, like like this is sort of a just emotionally really hard to get through. I think there's a lot of optimism and there's a lot of like, you know, like a lot of wins along the way
Yeah.
with our
Mhm.
characters, right?
Yeah.
And it's like things are really dark, but they tend to like work out, sort of. Which I just found really interesting. And there were some parts that almost read kind of YA-ish to me, not in a bad way at all, but just like it was just a little bit more straightforward and simple, which again, like we've been saying, it's a shorter book, right? It probably needs that. But I just thought that the tone felt so interesting and it felt it felt cohesive. So like there's other I mentioned this about like the Will of the Many, that it kind of felt some parts felt really YA and some parts felt really adult and really dark. And it was like jarring. This didn't feel like that at all. It felt like a really interesting kind of blend, almost the word that comes to mind is almost kind of fairy tale-ish at some parts. I don't know if that's
Yeah.
accurate or not. But it kind of felt that way a little bit. Am I crazy?
I
What do
no,
you
I
guys
think I
think?
know. I think I know exactly what you're talking about because
Okay.
I didn't think of it as a YA, is which a lot of this stuff will fit into it, but I thought of it a lot of like classical fantasy,
Mm.
where
Mm.
in a lot of classical fantasy, like you have dark things that are going on, but there's always that like hope and optimism that is imbued in the
Yeah.
story, and I
Mm.
think that is what this book does a really good job of. And I said that about the original trilogy too, that Philip does a really good job of paying homage to classic fantasy, the stuff that a lot of people probably read and grew up on, while
Mhm.
still doing like new and modern things. And I think that this book does that same thing again, just really well.
Yeah. Maybe that's a
Mm.
better word for it. Yeah. That feels good to me. What were you gonna say?
I was just gonna say the character dynamics, Rial, Kel, and then the third one I keep forgetting. The character dynamics kind of reminded me of slightly like what was that trilogy that John Gwynne did after Faithful and the Fallen? It was like the of
Blood and
Blood and
Bone or
Bone.
Bloodsworn?
I
The
think it was
Viking
of Blood
one?
and Bone.
Okay.
It was
Okay.
like the sequel trilogy to
Yes.
Faithful and the Fallen.
Okay.
Yeah. Blood and
Some of
Bone.
those characters, and that were like descendants of some of the ones that
Yeah.
from the
That's a good
original
comparison.
one trilogy, kind of reminded me of that dynamic, and also their ages probably lent themselves to more of the, that maybe that YA feel that you're feeling, Jake, in this.
Yeah.
And also now I'm reading Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn, and reading the Dragonbone Chair and Stone of Farewell right now, and they those books really, as I've been reading them, kind of leaped out at me. It's like that's that balance between the light and the darkness that this it reminded
Hmm.
me of in this entry in particular, but also in the Edan trilogy as a whole. Is like there's like, even when it's dark, there is like a little fantastical quality to it.
Yeah.
It's like there's almost like a fantastical whimsy juxtaposition against the darkness. And maybe that is a classical fantasy thing, like Tom, like you were saying.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm liking that terminology a lot better than because YA doesn't feel like the right word. It kind of feels like Lord of the Rings to me in the sense like Lord of the Rings is really dark, but it
yep.
doesn't feel that dark when I'm reading it, if that makes
No,
Mm.
sense.
no, it's that whimsy and like hope that I think a lot of, because
Yeah.
like I think that's what people will talk about when they start to talk about grimdark, and a lot of people point to um, a Game of Thrones as that, because that series, I mean, it still has like hope and all. It has so much going on in it, but I think it's one of those first fantasies that people read where it felt a little more dark, gritty, and realistic, and it maybe lost some of that whimsy and like I don't think saying a fairy tale
Mhm.
esque like element to it is wrong at all.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah,
Cool. Yeah, that makes
And it
sense.
and it doesn't have the grit and like the grime and the crudeness that some of the grimdark novels have. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Where it's just like very in your face.
Yeah.
And you don't feel that. It may allude to certain things, but you don't really feel it you know, in the same visceral way, which is
Yes.
nice, and I think it serves the story well. But yeah,
Absolutely. And like he does some of that in the trilogy, right? Like
yes, yeah,
it's not as in your face as some other writers will do it, but it's like there's some crazy stuff in there.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
totally.
yeah,
So yeah, that's I'm glad I brought that up because I think that that helps uh, not shift how I feel about it, but just help me put maybe more accurate words to how I felt about it. So I like that. A question I have for you guys: did you have anything when we hear it's a sequel, right? And there's a lot of interesting things that a lot of interesting ways that Philip could have gone with this. And was there anything that you were like really hoping to see happen or pop up or a character or anything that either that you were stoked to have in there or you were like, oh, I was kind of I really wanted to see this and it didn't happen. Not in a bad way. Like he's going to keep writing in this world, so maybe it'll pop up later. But because I had one that I was really interested if we get to see it and it wasn't in here, which is okay. But I'm curious if you guys did as well.
Mhm.
Nothing really jumped out at me personally, only because, the series ended, I felt like so well, and I was so excited to read this. I kind of tried to go in with very um without having any expectations one way or another, because I always feel like you don't really know where a story like this is going to go, especially since it's so close to
Mhm.
the events of the trilogy. So it was kind of hard for me to necessarily go, oh, I really hope this XYZ happens. I kind of just tried to go like, lay it on me. Let's see what happens.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna go for the ride and see what happens. But that was
yeah.
that's me.
No, that's the only thing. So when I knew that there was going to be a sequel, I thought that maybe the scope of it would involve a little bit more of like post-war, post whatever happens at the end of the trilogy, like governments, how the kingdoms like were
Mm.
rebuilding and regrouping. That is like, I'm not even saying that I necessarily really wanted that, but that is something that I thought maybe would get, and I think that would have made the story feel like because this feels like the original trilogy is to me feels a lot more big and epic. Not
Mhm.
that this isn't, but it is definitely a smaller, more like
Sure.
streamlined story. And I think I was maybe more expecting, okay, we're going to keep that larger view and see, okay, what's Sequoia doing? What's Orvindil doing? What are all these other kingdoms that were affected by everything that happened? Like maybe we're going to go back to the mark and see what's going on. And it's not that we didn't get to see the world. I just thought maybe we would see it in a more of a rebuilding phase and like
Mm.
Yeah.
rebuilding society. Or I mean, not that society was like destroyed completely or anything, but
I know what you mean though.
that's one thing I thought that maybe we'd see in here, but it's not like a I really wanted it. It's just kind of a guess that I had,
Sure.
and it was very wrong.
That makes sense though.
Yeah.
I think for me, I'm really curious about Imhar because
Mm,
he has this like silver hand
yeah.
that seems resistant to dragon fire. And I was like, there's a dragon. I know there's going to be a dragon in here. Do I
Right.
get to go see him kill a dragon with his bare hands? Like
Oh,
I
okay.
wanted to see something cool with that.
Yeah.
And maybe in the future, Philip, if you listen to this, give me a short story, give me something. Just make something up on the spot. Tell me something
Yeah,
fun.
yeah.
But yeah, I wasn't disappointed by any means with that not being there, right? This is me purely making something up in my head.
Yeah.
But part of me was like, oh, I wonder, like, just what, he's a creative guy. What could he do with that? That could be cool.
Yeah.
But maybe in the future, we'll have something. I don't know.
We need more in the Edan verse.
We do. Yes,
He's
I
doing a
like that.
prequel.
Oh,
Prequel
that's
will be
right.
cool. Prequel will
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
very
Yeah, he
cool.
is doing a prequel. So
Yeah.
I think he
Ah,
said, did he say 200 or 300 years before the original trilogy? I think.
Oh,
oh
wow.
wow, cool.
Yeah.
Do
So
you
like a
know?
pretty big gap.
Do you know standalone
I don't
versus?
remember if he said if it was
Ooh.
going to be a series or a standalone. So,
Well, either way, we're here for it.
yeah,
Yep.
exactly. Absolutely here for it.
Definitely. Awesome. Well, do we have any final thoughts to kind of round us out here? Or do you guys feel pretty satisfied with where this went?
I think I'm good.
Think you're good? I feel pretty
Yeah.
good.
I would just say, anyone watching this far that hasn't read the trilogy yet, it's, one of those few, I feel like it's like one of those few modern fantasy series that still feels like some of the stuff that one would have grown up reading, but it still feels modern, that it
Yeah.
takes certain best elements of modern fantasy and mixes it with the classical in a really nice way. I don't see too
Yeah.
many series do that. They usually fall in one camp or the other.
Yeah.
And yeah, the prose is just beautiful. Like if you haven't checked it out, you got to check it out. But
You
yeah.
got to check it out. You got to check it
Absolutely.
out. Fantastic. Well, this has been awesome to talk about this with you guys. We're kind of early on here. I haven't seen too much content out on YouTube about this story, which is part of why I wanted to do it. Like, it's just, it's great, and I think we all agree. Like, more people need to get to this, and it's just fun to talk about the stuff that we like, even without that.
Yeah.
So, thank you guys so much for giving me some of your evening to discuss this. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks for having
Thanks
me.
for having us. Yeah.
Awesome. Sweet. And thank you guys for watching. I don't know. Leave a comment. If you read this, what did you think? What's going on? Are you excited for the 200 or 300 years in the past prequel? That sounds awesome. I'm super excited for that. And obviously, both of these guys are going to be linked in the video. If you somehow are not already subscribed, what are you doing? Go subscribe. You should have done that long ago. And thank you guys so much once again. And I guess we will see everybody next time. Thanks a lot.